like that, to go along with it.
No, I thought it was a little lame.
Free hat or something. I'm just kind of assuming.
Should have given you a free hat.
Yeah.
You see,
some
our new
Apple
outdoor
temporary
editor,
tattoos or-
Marcus. That's his name, right? I want to make sure I get that right.
Good thing we're live with that right now.
He's got a really sweet Apple shirt. You see
Yeah.
that? It's like blue with like the subtle Apple logo on it.
Just write Apple and tell them you want the merch. They'll send it to you. It'll
I
happen.
don't.
get one of those really cool
that's
jackets
actually
that Drake's
Apple's
wore.
the only company where it doesn't work that way.
Oh, really? Oh, all right. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Close to the Metal. This is our weekly podcast where we talk about computing, and we usually go in depth with some specific thing having to do with that. Today, we're going to be talking about the Western Digital Blue SSD that has just come out, and we're going to just kind of talk about that and SSD tech in general, and maybe what you should have for your computer if you're looking to upgrade. Maybe what way you should go. We want to hear your questions and comments. I don't know what's going on behind me over here already. It's chaos. But go ahead, if you're watching right now on YouTube, go ahead and pop in there. Let us know your comments as we go. If you have questions, I'll make sure we get to those. So drop them in. Just if we're not quite to that yet, just have some patience, and I'll make sure that we get to them. I'm your host, Greg Nibbler, and to my right,
Brad Burke.
Brad Burke and
Matt Smith.
Matt Smith, resplendent with, now holding up the drive right there so everybody can see it. So let's talk about this. Western Digital, just purchased SanDisk not too long. How long ago was this?
I don't remember.
Okay.
It was like the
All right.
last 6 months to
Last
a year
6
or
months.
something.
6 months to a year. I've already annoyed Matt, so we'll see how this goes. So they purchased SanDisk.
Oh yes, I remember. That was a banner day.
Which kind of gives them access to a lot more technology. Western Digital, always known for their hard disks, but now with these SSD drives that are coming out, this is something they've been doing for a while. We've got just a little bit of a backstory on some of these. They do have the different color coding that comes along with these, with Western Digital, kind of a standard thing. Blue, maybe you guys can explain. Blue and green, what's the difference?
Well, they got green, blue, red, and black.
And black.
On their whole line.
Okay.
Not on the SSDs. They're just doing green and blue on the SSDs.
Okay.
But,
And black.
well,
Like a year ago. But
that
that's
was kind
confusing.
of a different thing. But
Don't be
yeah,
ridiculous.
So,
Just saying, technically.
so green is like the entry level / they kind of like spit it as like being budget or like eco-friendly because they use less power. So they're like, yeah, you're saving the planet.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous, but it's the green. Blue is like the mainstream one. The black's like, don't tell anyone you got
Right.
this, but it's pretty sweet.
It's like the platinum card.
It's the black
Yeah,
edition.
okay. All right.
And then the red is like enterprise, high durability, like sort of stuff. So
Okay.
yeah. So they try to do that just to make it easier for people to buy hard drives because, they're kind of you look at RPMs or connection types and
It's not the
people's
most
eyes kind of gloss
yeah.
over and it's a smart move. So
It's not the most exciting piece of hardware to look at visually.
no, not to look at.
So, well, let's get into it. So we're reviewing a very specific one today, and we're going to talk about this specific one. I don't even know if the Digital Trends review is up.
It's not.
It's not up, so you're getting the first kind of crack at it right here. So it's the new Blue solid-state drive 1 terabyte that we're going to be talking about. So let's get into this. Let's get some story. Like, what exactly are we looking at right here?
Well, basically, this is. I've been calling it Western Digital's first solid-state hard drive, which I think Brad might say is not quite true because they made this like solid-state hard drive mechanical disk hybrid like a little while ago.
But that doesn't count.
But this is the
count.
first. This is the
Okay.
first pure solid-state hard drive from Western Digital, and it was always kind of weird because Western Digital is like this really big brand in storage, but they didn't have anything for solid-state for a really long time. Just because solid-state storage is a completely different thing technically from disk storage.
Right.
So,
I've always just associated them with externals. External hard drives and
Sure.
Seagate and all that.
I think that's sort of where that technology has gone recently because
Right.
the storage is so much cheaper and it's slow enough that it doesn't matter that you're running it over USB because that's going to be probably a bigger cap on your speed.
Right.
But
So the idea with this is that being a Blue drive is supposed to be just like the drive you're going to purchase if you're like, hey, I want a solid state hard drive. I don't want it to cost too much. I want to perform pretty well. Like this, this is aimed at that sort of category. So It's a SATA drive, and they're only offering SATA drives.
SATA.
Yes.
What is SATA?
So SATA is connection standard for hard drives, and it's a pretty old one.
Okay.
It's been around for a long time, and it's, as far as installation goes, it's like a really simple standard. Like, you have a SATA connection on your motherboard, you plug the hard drive in, and it should just show up in your operating system, pretty much.
Okay.
The only thing about it is that it can only handle so much bandwidth, basically. It can only transfer so much data. And so when a drive comes out right now and it's SATA only, that's basically telling you that it's not going for the most performance, because the drives that have the most performance are transferring 3 times as much data, more than SATA can even handle.
Okay.
So that does put a limit on the performance.
As far as speed.
Yeah, as far as the transfer speeds go. So with this drive, you're going to be looking at around 500 megabytes per second sequential reads and write speeds. And I think the actual figures was about 520 on the writes and around 500 on the reads, but that's not bad.
Now, how does that compare to something like the black level?
Well, there is no black level for the solid state drive.
Okay, there is none for that.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
So to give you an example, as far as how it compares to other drives, some other ones we tested are the Samsung 850 EVO and the Transcend SSD 370, which are both in the same price range as well. They perform essentially identically.
Okay. So in this price range, it's about...
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, as you get into heavier and heavier loads, there can be differences that show up, but we really just tested it as, someone that's going to be using it every day, using it for some gaming, using it to transfer some large files back and forth on their PC, not for servers or things like that. And in the everyday use, all those drives are going to be more or less the same.
Okay.
They're going to feel more or less the same as you use them.
So for a casual gamer
or a hardcore gamer.
Or a hardcore
totally
gamer
fine.
would still use this as well.
Yeah, you could totally use that for your hardcore gaming rig.
Okay.
And just for reference to a mechanical hard drive, like you were saying, like a regular other one would run about 100 to 150 megabytes per second.
Okay, that's good
so
to
it's
know.
about So these are probably about
definitely
5 times faster, 4 or 5 times faster than most spinning disk drives.
Okay, well that's good to know. And so, what is the pricing level? What are we looking at for this?
So we're looking at $300 for the 1 terabyte drive, and that is in range with the other competitors that I mentioned, the Samsung and the Transcend. It is a little pricier than the least expensive drives that you can purchase for a 1 terabyte size. The least expensive drives are things like Crucial MX300. That one gets around $250.
Okay.
And also, there's 2 other versions of this drive. The 250 gigabyte one, that's $80, and the 500 gigabyte one, which is $140. Kind of strangely enough. I thought that was a little weird because it means you could buy 2 500 gigs.
Yeah.
It would be less than the 1 terabyte. I'm not sure why they did that, but anyway,
Yeah, that does seem really odd, because why couldn't you just put 2 in? I mean, is there an actual reason for that?
That seems to be, I was looking at some pricing this morning for other drives too, like the Samsung drives, and it seems to be kind of the trend is that there's sort of linear pricing for, for these drives, that it's like you're going to save $5 or $10 maybe.
Which didn't used to be the case. Even just maybe even a year ago, I'd have to go back and look, but definitely a couple years ago, you kind of paid a premium a lot of times for the bigger and bigger drives. Mm-hmm. So it was not just you had a bigger drive and it was a linear, it's twice the storage, it's twice as much. A lot of times you would have twice the storage and then it'd be
2.5 times as much or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And the other thing to talk about as far as the drive's performance goes is endurance and warranty. So we've got 400 terabyte write on the endurance for the 1 terabyte drive. So what that means is that it's rated that you can write 400 terabytes of data, so 400 times as much as it can possibly store to the drive before it starts to conk out on you.
So you could wipe it and
Right.
Okay, wipe it and write it 4 times
Right.
before it starts failing.
400.
400. Okay,
Yeah.
400
Yeah,
times.
400.
Gotcha. 400 times. All right. Yeah.
So that's pretty good. Yeah. Compared to other drives in the category, I would say it's better than average from what I was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
I did notice that the Transcend drive I mentioned, the SSD 370, has like 1180 terabyte write rating, which is just ridiculously high.
But like, how many times are you going to actually utilize that? Like, test that?
Practically speaking, this drive is rated for probably more use than an average user is going to give it in a decade.
Right.
And there's actually been tests that on SSDs in real world situations, and they've even found pretty much every brand underrates their reliability. So, long story short, if you've ever heard someone say to you, SSDs, you got to be worried about the reliability long term, they conk out eventually, I'm not going to have to worry about it here. And
just don't defrag it.
3-year warranty, which is actually just kind of average.
Okay.
So, I was hoping maybe they do 5 years on it, but yeah, 3 years.
3-year warranty. All right. Well, how long would you say you would actually use this? So, I mean, you can rewrite it 400 times. It can last, I don't know, what's the endurance? Like, how long would you typically keep something like this?
I mean, as far as like a performance standpoint,
you can keep it for forever.
With hard drives and with memory to a certain extent, you can kind of just keep throwing stuff in there. Like, I filled up my hard drive. I'll just, a year and a half down the road, I'll just buy another one and put it in. I don't need to it's not like a graphics card where I'm going to I got a new hard drive, so I better pull out my old hard drive first. So, there's no reason that you couldn't just keep using these pretty much indefinitely.
So that's a pretty solid investment then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just pick one up.
And I would say it's probably, a better investment than even like a hard disk was because, I don't know, hard disks, like, they did have like improvements in access times that eventually kind of made them, you sort of just like, after a few years, you're like, okay, this probably would be a better drive. I buy this newer one, it'll fill faster. The thing about solid state drives is they're getting way quicker than this one is on their bandwidth, which means like if you're transferring a large file, it'll go way quicker. But the access time, which is the time that it takes to actually get to data when you request it, is in the, tens of milliseconds across the board. And what that means is that whether you get this drive or you get a really fancy one that, Firefox or whatever, the first time you open it on your system, after you boot it up, it's going to be like that.
Yeah.
And that's going to be true for pretty much until this drive is, eventually dies. So, you could potentially use this for a very, very long time, I think.
So just before we move on, just kind of talking about SSD in general and where it's at, just to like sum up, if somebody's going to go out to look to buy one of these, like what are some of the key things that you look for?
I would say, I don't know, when I'm looking for a drive for a build, it tends to be price first.
Price first?
Like there are a handful of brands that make these drives. They all fall at basically the same price point. So, you can pick a reputable brand and look for a good deal. It tends to be, at least my thought on it, that like a WD is the same as a Samsung, is the same as a Crucial, is the same as a Transcend. And if one of them's $50 for that 200 gigabyte drive, then pick that one up because that's a screaming deal.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Something about solid-state drives right now, which is different from a lot of hardware, is that there's a ton of competition.
Yeah.
You don't see that in processors. You don't see that in video cards. You don't see that in a lot of areas of computers. But with solid-state drives, there's tons of companies that are making them. So we've seen some pretty good reductions in price over the last few years, and we also see very competitive pricing between these different drives. So oftentimes, you're best off just looking at the performance target level you want to look for, and then just buying whatever is least expensive within that range. So
especially, I think it's kind of like TVs too.
Yeah.
A lot of the parts that are actually inside these SSDs are only made by a few companies and then purchased by tons of different companies in different combinations and put together.
So across the board, it's generally similar.
So a lot of the components tend to, it's like a TV where you buy a TV and it's like this is the same panel as this other brand, but the processing is better in this one because they chose this chip instead of that chip. And if you really want to get knickknack snacky with it, you can. But like you're saying, like most of them,
but price
at this
is
point,
really good.
you're going to hit the SATA limit, and that's the end of the story.
Well, until we and we're going to talk about the limits of SATA too. Let's get to that here in a second. But we do have a question in the chat, which I encourage you, if you are watching, go ahead and drop your questions in there. We'll make sure we get to them. This is just from John asked, what SSD would you guys recommend for gaming, whether it be for PC or console? Probably depends on what kind of level of gaming you're looking at, or
I mean, I don't think you really, like most users, like we were saying, would need anything more than this. Like, it's
yeah,
just be
the thing about gaming is that's a common misconception, is that the solid state drive performance matters for gaming. It doesn't. Like, there is not anything a game's doing that's going to hit the bandwidth capability of any decent solid state drive.
Okay.
Now the access times, that is what matters, but all the solid state drives give you much better access times.
So it's not going to really matter which one.
Yeah,
you get.
so if you get this one, or you get a solid state drive like the Crucial MX300, which is $50 less than this, or even if you get one of those $80 drives that are like 120 gigabytes at the low end, like those are all going to give you very good performance, and you're not like this is not going to give you frames per second,
gotcha,
in your games. So, yeah.
Okay, so you're looking more at a GPU for that. That's more of a performance issue.
Yeah.
Which, close to the metal, we've got a lot of episodes up on YouTube and at digitaltrends.com. You can go through and if you want to go back and learn some more about those, especially for gaming, we've got a lot of episodes about that. Keep the questions coming, though, if you got more. So let's talk about the limits of SATA and the rise of, did I just say it right, or I said it wrong? I saw the glance from Matt.
SATA?
SATA. Okay,
whatever.
So wait, no, what is the right way?
I don't know.
Because I swear Brad just said SATA.
I've always said SATA.
Okay, so there is
Maybe
no right way.
Maybe at CES, I'll just get like 5 people in a group and we'll all say,
we'll get a consensus.
SATA. Until we've hashed it out.
Until somebody figures it out.
I usually say SATA, but
okay.
So that's the right one. But
all right, well, let's talk about the limits of that and just kind of the rise of like the new connections, like the PCIe hard drives.
Right. So like I was saying, the performance that you have here is about the limit of what you can get with SATA. So you just can't put any more bandwidth over that cable.
That's just as much as you can possibly get.
Yeah. So to solve that, companies have instead gone to the PCI Express bus, and the PCI Express is also actually a really old way of connecting things, but it has a lot more bandwidth because it was built for things like GPUs.
Okay.
And I don't think there's anything in a modern computer that pushes more bandwidth than a GPU through the system. I'm sure someone's going to find something that's wrong about that, but
prove Matt wrong.
But like that's a pretty extreme scenario.
Okay.
So the only problem was that PCI Express wasn't designed for hard drives. So when we saw early models come out that used it, they had some problems. Big one was they were usually not bootable. So you could use it, but you couldn't boot off of it. And the other problem was that could be weird performance quirks. It's just because, like I said, it wasn't designed with hard drives in mind.
Okay.
Whereas SATA was designed to be very simple, and you just plug it in and you're good. So to fix that, recently a new standard was put onto the PCIe that works with PCIe, and that's NVMe, and that's
what is NVMe?
That's not a connection type.
Okay. So it's a new standard for PCIe called NVMe.
Yeah. So
okay.
All right. It's a driver level, firmware level thing.
Okay.
It's non-volatile memory express. And so that means that PCIe, that's a connection standard. It's a thing on your computer you plug stuff into.
Right. It's a physical thing you're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a bus on your motherboard. It's actual physical connections. NVMe is not that. It's a way of making that connection work for hard drives.
Okay.
It's a driver level thing where if you have these drivers, which now Windows 10 comes with it by default, and that's been true for a little while now, you can just plug in a PCI Express hard drive, and it'll work like you would expect it to work.
Okay. All right.
And that's very important. It's kind of the new generation of hard drives. It's where hard drives are going now. Drives like this, these are your affordable drives that a lot of people are going to be using for their mainstream systems. SATA drives like this WD Blue, but PCI Express gives you so much more performance, and that it's rather astounding how much more performance. It's probably the area where computer performance has advanced the most.
Going back to this older
years.
connection,
yeah,
is put it into an advancement.
Yeah, that has allowed way better performance on solid-state hard drives at the high end. So
wow. So what's the availability of these, like as far as something like that for a solid state?
Well, they're very available now.
Okay.
You can get them as add-in cards that add in like your GPU would to a PCI Express slot.
Okay.
Or also now motherboards are having they're called M.2 slots.
Okay.
And there's these little ones that are on your motherboard. They kind of look like a really tiny RAM space slot, something like that. And so you have these tiny solid-state drives that plug into those.
Nice.
And yeah, they are very available. Particularly Samsung has a ton of these on the market. Like pretty much all their high-end drives come in a M.2 NVMe compatible form factor. So it's not that hard to get them. They're just more expensive.
About twice the price. I was just looking at it, and it's about.
Oh, is it that much? Yeah.
It's the 512.
I mean, it would make sense.
The 512 gigabyte 950 Pro, which is an NVMe drive, is about $300.
So twice as much. Is it worth it going up that much for that speed difference?
It depends what you're doing. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
if you're playing,
Like, what would
if
you
you're
be
just
doing?
playing games, then no. If you're like on a workload that constantly requires the transferring of like large rendered files or things like that, maybe like if you're trying to constantly load massive files to a 3D modeling program, maybe it's a kind of a work focused thing, or you're just trying to like set benchmark speeds for hard drives for some reason.
Right.
I don't know.
But otherwise, you'd probably be looking at more of like a commercial aspect of going to one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, would a general consumer have a need for that at all?
The only situation you might is that it's much smaller, or it's somewhat smaller, and it kind of just sneaks onto your motherboard. A lot of times, like right underneath a graphics card, it'll just sort of lay flat against the motherboard.
Okay.
Which, like, we have an ITX system we're looking at right now, a very small computer, and in that case, like, you probably could have found somewhere to shove that hard drive, but it's easier to just tuck it under a graphics card and call it a day.
Okay.
So.
All right, we're going to talk about too here, getting into what you need on your PC, or like what some different some advice that these guys have for you. We do have another question. Do you guys think that M.2 drives will be used more in desktop computers as they are in laptops?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to start becoming more of a
we've already seen them used fairly frequently.
Okay.
The PCI Express add-in card style is really not that popular.
Okay.
You only really see it on some more enterprise-focused ones. That seems to be the trend. And I think that makes sense because the M.2, even if we end up seeing it most often right now in these huge gaming systems that are like really expensive, most desktops are actually not that big. And a lot of them wouldn't fit a PCI Express card easily. There might not even be a second PCI slot for use besides a GPU. So the M.2 just makes a lot more sense. Like, why make it 3 times the size when it doesn't have to be? It's not really any good reason.
So we'll be seeing that a lot more often.
Yeah. It's become a lot more popular.
Yeah, a lot more popular.
Because now motherboards are supporting it fairly frequently. So now that support's there, there's a bigger market for the M.2 drives.
Okay. All right, well, moving on here, just to kind of talk about what maybe everybody needs in their PC, get some more advice on that. Let us know your questions. Go ahead and drop those in there. If you're watching live on YouTube, you can pop those in. If you're listening via podcast, you can always send them afterward, and we'll get to you. So yeah, the final question here, I guess just to kind of answer for everybody is, what do we need in our PCs? What do you really need in your PC if you're looking to upgrade to one of the solid state drives?
I think most people would be, if you have an existing computer, this is like a way that you could improve performance if you don't have an SSD already.
Okay.
I think that's like a really good way to just, kickstart your system and get faster boot times and some faster file transfers. But I don't know that, I think every system that you put together or buy nowadays should probably have an SSD. I don't think that's unfair to say that. Mechanical systems with only mechanical drives are noticeably slower if you've been using one with an SSD.
Right.
Yeah, the SATA drives are, the affordable SATA drives are really the way to go right now. Like I was saying earlier, the WD Blue 120 or 250 gigabyte one is $80. And, that's a drive that you could put in your computer as your primary system drive. You could install Windows on it, or whatever operating system you use. And it would be extremely quick. And you'd have enough space to install Windows and also put a fair amount of other games or applications or, just files on it for everyday use.
For $80.
And it's $80.
Yeah, that's not a bad deal.
That's getting to the point where it's something that, either system builders or people looking for an upgrade can really consider. And because it is SATA, which a lot of computers have open SATA ports, it's something that a lot of people can consider upgrading to. And because it's so cheap, we're seeing these more and more frequently in systems off the shelf.
Gotcha.
Like, we're starting to get to the point where $500, $600 laptops are starting to get solid-state storage in them, which is great. And I would agree with Brad that if you are purchasing a new system right now, it's really hard to not purchase a solid-state drive.
You have to go out of your way to find one with that one.
It's really hard to justify not purchasing the solid-state drive.
Okay.
That's what I mean to say. It's just such a big benefit to your system. Like, there's not anything else that you can do for everyday use that's going to be a better benefit as far as, an upgrade you have for your system. Like, whenever I see someone that's like, oh, my computer's so slow, like, it just feels so terrible and laggy, I don't understand, it's like always someone that still has a mechanical hard disk.
And that's it. Yeah, that's actually a question here. Would you recommend having a large hard disk drive with a secondary SSD or just one large SSD?
I mean, I think the price right now is kind of tough to stomach
for
a lot of people. That $80 price point is really nice, but 256 gigabytes, especially if you're talking about in a gaming PC, is maybe not enough for a lot of people. And that backing that up, because mechanical drives are cheap right now too.
Yeah,
you can get a couple terabytes of storage for not very much money.
Right,
and that's a good setup. That's a setup I have at home. I have a boot SSD that I keep a few games on, and a data drive that I keep everything else on.
That's the way to do it. You can
balance
get one of those
both.
Inexpensive drives, like 250 gigabyte model of WD Blue, and you can pair that. So that would be $80, and you pair that with a 1 terabyte, let's say, hard drive, hard disk, and hard disk is probably $50-$60.
Right.
So for $110, $120 or whatever, you have 1.25 terabytes of storage. You've got all the benefits of really fast solid-state storage where you need it, and
then you
also that solution is going to last you for many years.
Yeah.
So it's just a good deal. It's a good way to go. I mean, you could spend a lot more money in other areas of your computer and get a lot less benefit.
Yeah.
Say these a new graphics card comes out, the latest NVIDIA ones come out, and it's like, oh, it's like 40% quicker, 50% quicker. Wow, that's awesome. And then you're spending $300, $400, $500, $600 on a graphics card to get that. And then you could, buy one of these for $80, 250 gigabytes, replace your mechanical disk, your access times are probably going down by a factor of 10, and your transfer speeds are probably going up by like 4 or 5x over what you had before.
Wow.
For $80. Like,
that's a pretty damn good deal.
You can't, not do that.
Yeah.
If you do,
you can't afford not to get.
You're going to be a very sad person, almost immediately. So
very sad.
Very sad.
Very upset.
And again, I think one of the nice things about these is it's not only is it like a huge performance upgrade, it's an easy upgrade. Like.
Yeah.
Even off, because it's hard when you get a pre-built system from wherever, and you I want to put a nice graphics card in this. And it's the power supply isn't good enough, and you don't have the right PCIe ports, and there isn't space in the case. Whereas you could pretty much put a 2.5-inch drive into any off-the-shelf system, and it's going to
work.
Room, and a lot of them even include here's an extra SATA cable and plug it in, SATA cable, and plug it in. Well, if you have something else.
I'm going to tell you something that's going to make a lot of system builders cringe. They're going to hate this, but I have a secondary drive that's a SATA solid-state drive in my computer, and I don't have any dedicated 2.5-inch drive base. So I just plugged it in to the power and the SATA, and I hung it off some other cords, and it just kind of dangles there.
It's good for cooling.
But it doesn't matter.
It's good for cooling.
There's not any spinning parts in it.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It just hangs there. And you know what? If you just want to do this and plug the two things in and just shove it out in that corner.
Okay,
fine.
and I know
Fine.
logically that's absolutely right, but still that's cringe-inducing to me. I've broken so many hard drives by dropping them or having them dangle off
there's
something.
nothing else in your computer that you can really do that to.
Yeah.
Everything else has to be mounted to something, or you have to screw something else in. These drives, you just throw them in there.
Yeah.
Plug them in, and you're good.
Just dangling wires
could
everywhere.
not be easier. So.
All right. Well, it sounds like there's no reason not to get a solid-state drive. I'm pretty much sold at this point. This is absolutely something we should do. So this is the Western Digital Blue one that has just come out. The Western Digital Blue SSD. And that's the 1 terabyte version that we got here with us.
Yeah.
Pretty good deal. You said what was the price range for these?
$300 for the 1 terabyte.
$300 for
which
one.
Again, it's not the best that you can get, and that's the only problem with this drive right now is there are some that are a little cheaper and perform similarly. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to see Western Digital come down.
Well, they've been the other ones have been on the market longer too, which helps.
And this is just coming out, and
I'm hoping that when this is wider availability, then maybe they'll knock a little bit off that.
And I will say that it launched, its MSRP launched at basically where the other drives, where the Samsung 850 Evo is sitting now, because the MSRP on those drives is $100, $150 higher depending on the drive.
Okay.
So they have at least caught up with. They weren't just ours drive is also $400 because that's what yours costs. So
there's a little bit of marketing in there. Yeah. Let's try to figure it out. All right. Well, the full review is going to be up at digitaltrends.com coming up soon.
Yeah.
The full review of this specific Western Digital solid state drive, and reviews of pretty much everything else are right there at digitaltrends.com. So be sure to check that out and follow Close to the Metal. This is our show that we do once a week, every Wednesday at 10 a.m. And you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you find podcasts. We'll be there. There's also a whole backlog of these episodes that are good for any time you want to check something out. Take a look at the titles. Maybe you're interested in a new GPU or a specific review. We've got something up there, and every week we'll have something else. So if you have a suggestion, feel free to email podcast@digitaltrends.com and let us know, and we will be back next week with another episode.